I can give is that mindset is everything. Mindset is the foundation of all of your success. Coaching, self-awareness, journaling, the power of that lies in the fact that it makes the invisible visible. And so what we're talking about, the invisible, is it's our subconscious. Our subconscious completely rules the roost. And if we're talking in terms of, if we want to bring some visuals to it, if you imagine like 95% of our thoughts and beliefs are subconscious, and only 5% of them are in our conscious rational mind. Through the process of turning the invisible visible, we're able to, this comes back to the self-belief thing, we're able to create new beliefs that actually support the goals that we have and help us to move forward and do the things that we want to do, whatever that might be, whether it's business, life, relationships, health.
I'd like to welcome today Sophie Clyde-Smith. Sophie is a solopreneur coach and co-founder of the Alt Collective in Jersey. She's a business coach and mentor who helps female solopreneurs to create more freedom, flexibility, fulfillment and financial abundance in both their lives and in business, which I absolutely love, Sophie. So I'd like to thank you for being with us today. And firstly, I'd love it if we could just start by you telling us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Jane. It's such an honour and pleasure to be here talking with you today. So I'm Sophie. I'm a female solopreneur coach. I'm currently based in Jersey, which is where I'm originally from. And I did set up my business in London, and which is where I think we first met. And
that's right, yes.
and so I was working and setting up my business in London, and then COVID hit. Yeah. And so my husband and I moved back to Jersey for what we thought was going to be a few weeks, and that turned into life. So yeah, we're here now. During the last couple of years, I've also had a little girl called Delilah, and she's 10 months old at this point. So that's completely transformed, obviously, life and the way that I manage everything, my business and my own personal wellness and everything. I'm sure we'll get into all of this a little bit more. But yeah, I'm here now, and I'm working part-time actually, and I get to look after my little one in the morning, and then I work on the business in the afternoon, and I work with some incredible women. They all totally inspire me. I tend to work with women who are really passionate, and they work on their own. And, part of the reason why I do that is because I'm a solopreneur myself, and I understand the challenges that we as women and as solopreneurs face particularly. So I love what I do. It's an incredible honor to, support the women that I support. And I do that through my one-to-one coaching programs. But I also have a membership where I support sort of women in a group capacity. I host events and things like that. And I've recently set up Alt Collective with my co-founder, Claudia, which is events and support and services for female entrepreneurs based specifically in Jersey.
That's amazing. And yeah, like you say, it's surprising really as female solopreneurs how lonely it can get at times, and you forget that. And I think, like you say, before obviously the pandemic hit and we were able to go to events, and obviously I know that you hosted events as well, and that was great networking and bringing people together. And obviously now everything's virtual, which is another great way of being able to connect with people all over the world as well. Obviously you can reach out to more people, and yeah, you're surprising how much you need having someone to maybe coach you in that area, because you can get a bit lost and overwhelmed, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I'll probably share a little bit more about this later on, but I've always had a coach myself at different parts of the business and for different reasons. And yeah, it can be really lonely. And so doing things that help to combat that loneliness and increase connection, even if it's just, like having coffees, and it doesn't have to be with a coach or anything. It's just a great way to give that boost of energy.
And so what was it that actually inspired you to start then as a business coach and mentor, especially for female solopreneurs?
Yeah, so my journey to setting up a business was very, I guess the word is, maybe it's organic. It wasn't, planned for years ahead. And I definitely didn't identify as an entrepreneur or somebody who could be self-employed at all, really, until I started working for a company called Well-to-Do, and the founder was a business coach. And so I joined the company in a completely different capacity. I was helping them with an area of their business, which was the careers, helping people develop careers in wellness. And I'd come from a recruitment background, so that worked really nicely. But I discovered coaching through the business coach. I'd never even heard of it before. Like, what the hell was coaching? And I started to, I realized that I had a lot of the skills and a lot of the expertise that were very relevant and useful for coaching. And so in that environment, I started to do some coaching, and then I did I self-funded a coaching qualification. And it was actually through that process where because when you do a coaching qualification, you have to be coached a lot. And so I noticed that I was being controlled by lots of limiting beliefs about myself, that I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't see myself as somebody who could set up a business or work for themselves, or, I just did not identify as that type of person. But then I realized that it was stories, it wasn't fact. It wasn't a fact that I couldn't be an entrepreneur or that I wouldn't be successful. They were just stories. And so that was a real light bulb moment for me, sort of being coached. And then I set up a side hustle on the side of my full-time job. I started to coach people outside of work. And actually the reason that started was purely because I had to do some coaching for my qualification. And so I did that. And then I was like, oh, hold on a second. Like, I could do more of this and I could get paid for this. And so I did that as a side hustle. And that's really where the inspiration, started. But it wasn't until I'd built my confidence, and after about 6 or 7 months of side hustling, where I was getting good results for my clients, and really, actually, most importantly, I was loving it. I was really enjoying it. I had that positive feedback. I was like, I want to do more of this. I want to do more. And it was at that point that I quit my full-time job and then went full-time. And then it evolved into the business that it is today. So it wasn't overnight. It wasn't like, oh, I was born an entrepreneur. Actually, it wasn't until I was 27 that I even explored the possibility of it. So yeah, hopefully that, gives some people an indication of the different ways that they themselves could, be inspired to set up their own businesses.
Yeah, I think we get lost in the fact that people think it's an overnight success with entrepreneurs, and it's really not. It's often from a lot of years of hard work or building up and doing the work yourself. So yeah, and it's interesting, like you say, how we don't really think of coaches. I never really thought of coaches. You think of coaches in the sense of, if you want to get physically fit, you go to a coach, and mentors in careers, but you don't actually think of the coaching. Coaching is very much like more, I think of people from America, some of the big coaches over there, and it is becoming more and more here, and it's so valuable to invest in a coach, especially when you're looking into areas that you need improvement in, even in your personal development, never mind a business.
Yeah, my goodness. I mean, there's a coach for everything now, isn't there? Yeah. And one of the main things, particularly for the coaching that I do, is the accountability piece.
Yeah.
If you work on your own, and you've got all of these ideas, you've got all these things racing through your mind, all of the limiting beliefs, all of the fears, all of the things that you want to do, there's a lot going on. So to have somebody to talk to and to be able to brain dump all of that information and make some sense of it is so powerful. And yeah, it makes it really enjoyable as a coach to help women do that.
Yeah, it's definitely powerful. Yeah. And for anyone who may be looking to start as an entrepreneur or maybe start their own business, what's the best mindset advice that you'd give them?
This is such a great question. You've sort of set it up perfectly, because you asked there, like, what's the best piece of mindset advice you can give, and actually from like a sort of general perspective, sorry, I've got a bunch of flowers here in the way. From like a sort of general perspective, the most simple but yet powerful advice I think I can give is that mindset is everything. Mindset is the foundation of all of your success. And I use success not in terms of earning, 100K, that if you want to do that, that's success, that's great, but a more holistic view of success, having that fulfillment, having that freedom, that flexibility, but also the financial success. So your mindset is the foundation of it all. And if you're able to get a hold of that mindset and to use it to your advantage, then you're much more likely to create a scenario where you're creating the success that you might desire. So that's the sort of very general, I guess, piece of advice, is to acknowledge and understand that mindset is like super, super, super important. It's the foundation of everything. And then perhaps on a more specific level, I would say that there are lots of different parts to mindset, but from doing the coaching that I've done, I would say that what it really boils down to is self-belief. If you have and you cultivate self-belief, then it has this incredible impact on the way that you work, in the way that you are in your life, the decisions that you make. And one example of a lack of the opposite of self-belief is self-doubt. And so when you doubt yourself, you're stuck in indecision, you're afraid of taking any actions. You probably are controlled by imposter syndrome because you don't believe in yourself. You don't believe that you're good enough. So you don't believe that you deserve to be where you are in that place of time. So we can see quite clearly the impact that a lack of self-belief can have, but also what self-belief can do. So the best piece of advice that I would give on that is to really recognize where you're at in your self-belief and understand, this isn't such an easy process. If it was easy, everybody would just have perfect mindset. They'd be out there doing all the things they want to do, which we know sadly isn't the case. So, it's easy for me to sit here and say, build your self-belief, build on that. But, if that's the first step, then of, generating the awareness of how to do that, then that's great. But yeah, I could probably talk for a whole hour on how to build your self-belief, but for the sake of this conversation, I think the first step would be to just recognize that, okay, where am I on the self-belief scale here and how can I improve it?
Yeah, I think recognizing it is definitely important. I know that even myself, I struggle with my mindset even daily. And I think even as a solopreneur, it's very easy to, because you're only talking to yourself a lot of the time, as well as clients, obviously, but you're having them conversations in your head that you have to battle to get tasks done every day or reach and achieve goals that you want to achieve. So yeah, mindset's so powerful. And I think that's where it helps when you can hear from people like yourselves on tips on how to, like you say, acknowledge it first and then see where you can build that up and focus on that.
Yeah. I think it's a phrase that I heard recently, which was, I think, really relevant, is coaching, self-awareness, journaling. The power of that lies in the fact that it makes the invisible visible. Yeah. And so what we're talking about, the invisible, it's our subconscious. Our subconscious completely rules the roost. And if we're talking in terms of if we want to bring some visuals to it, if you imagine that 95% of our thoughts and beliefs are subconscious, and only 5% of them are in our conscious rational mind. So if in our conscious rational mind, 5% of us is saying, I want to go out there and I'm going to go and ask that person to be on this podcast, and I'm going to go out there and I want to achieve that. But then 95% of our subconscious belief systems is saying to us, you're not good enough to do that. You do not deserve that. You don't have the skills. You can't do that. Then we can see clearly that we're not going to be able to go out there and do that. So through the process of turning the invisible visible, we're able to, this comes back to the self-belief thing, we're able to create new beliefs that actually support the goals that we have and help us to move forward and do the things that we want to do, whatever that might be, whether it's business, life, relationships, health, So yeah, I think it just, all of this is taking us to the sort of the main crux of it, which is self-awareness and building that self-belief.
Yeah, that's very important, especially if you start a business or wanting to be an entrepreneur. So yeah, really helpful. Thank you. And what's the best way that someone can make it happen? I love that you use the words make it happen, especially with your membership, because it is about making it happen. And especially with if you're wanting to start and smash a goal in business or life.
Yeah, great question. So I use the phrase make it happen a lot. And it actually originated from a book, which you probably had me talk about, Jane. I love it. It's called The Source by Tara Swart. And she's a neuroscientist. And the book is essentially about manifestation. Another word for manifestation is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change the way it thinks, to create new ways of thinking, new neural pathways. And that's essentially that another phrase for it is make it happen. That's what she explores in the book. So manifestation is the process of making it happen. To break down what the process of making it happen is, it's essentially you have a belief system. You believe that you're able to do something, and that impacts the way that you feel. It makes you feel energized. It gives you that sense of calm, that positivity, that determination, which impacts the way that you think. So you think things like, do you know what, I'm going to reach out to that person. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do that. Like, let's reframe this. Let's, that's not a failure. I've learned so much about how to deal with that. All of these thoughts, which lead to you then taking action. And also a piece of the puzzle is also habits as well. So it helps you to embed habits, which will help you to take action. So whether that's like having a good morning routine, because you believe, you're good enough that you're able to do it. It's all so interlinked. So you have the belief system, it makes you feel good, gives you these abundant thoughts, and that converts into these great habits. And then it helps you to take the action, whatever the action is, because that is really how simple it can be. It's just a case of taking action. And when we're stuck or when we are not taking action, we're not making things happen. So the best way that someone can make it happen is to, I sound like I'm repeating myself in a way, but it does really comes down to your mindset, the belief systems that you have, the power that we have. And one of the most amazing things is that we can control that ourselves, and recognizing that and owning that actually I have the power to transform the way I think, which is absolutely evidence-based and backed in science. That's what neuroplasticity is. It's the neuroscience behind it. Is a really empowering, it's so exciting to recognize that. And, whoever's listening to this, you may be like feeling really pumped and in a good place, and this adds to that. But someone listening to this might be like, oh, like, that's just so overwhelming. I can't even imagine where to begin. I can't do that. That's a really good indication that you're perhaps stuck in a mindset that is not serving you. And doing some of this mindset work, and like I said, it doesn't have to be with a coach. You can do this yourself. There's so many resources out there. The book, The Source, I highly recommend. There's lots of ways that you can do this on a lower budget. So I think it comes down to recognizing that the way to make it happen is to take action, and to recognize that if you're not taking action, try to understand why and to change that. That's what I would say to that question.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I know that myself, even just from your social media page, like with Instagram, or even on your website, the free resources that you're giving away, they've been so powerful in helping me change my mindset, because I had these ideas, like even this, wanting to interview people for, my channel, but it was like, had that problem and battle with it for ages. And like you say, it's a self-belief thing and a mindset thing, like, oh no, I'm not good enough to do that. I can't do that. So like you say, if anybody else out there is listening, thinking the same, they really want to do something, but how do they take them steps to do it? And it's all like I say, a mindset thing, and making it happen and following those processes. And yeah, so many good free resources out there for people as well. And obviously even listening to this, hopefully it will help someone.
Yeah, I really hope so. And like, you know, like you said, there's loads of free resources out there. There's some on my website that I'd love people to, you know, have access to. And I think one of the tools which is actually really powerful is there's a couple of specific things, but I quite like to use coaching tools in my practice. And one of them is, lots of people have heard of it, it's just like the worst case scenario tool. And this one's really simple, but we can be really controlled by our fears. And, you know, you use a great example of, you know, you setting up these really fantastic, this talk series, but we can be controlled by our fears. So our fears hold us back. But the funny thing about fears is like, they makes us worry about something that 9 times out of 10 would never happen.
That's true.
Going through the process of, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Let's just lay it on the table. Let's face it head on. Let's understand. Let's look at square in the eye. What is the worst case scenario? I could be rejected. They could not reply. I could, you know, fluff up one of the recordings. Like, let's just actually normalize that and take away its power. Because when it just is lurking in the back of our mind in this sort of vague fear space, that's when it holds us back. Whereas if we shine the light on it and actually just deal with it head on, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Cool. How would I deal with that? Okay, great. This is what I would do. But then the flip side of it is, what's the best case scenario? What's the possible outcomes here? What could be the impact to you and your business and in your life? And doing that part of the exercise gives you the power and the energy and the motivation to actually push past those fears and take the action. So that's a nice little tool that I think is simple but quite effective.
Yeah, it's definitely effective, very powerful tool. Definitely recommend it. And so that leads me on to actually asking if there are any business or mentor coaches that have actually inspired you.
Yeah, oh my goodness, so many along the journey. Like I mentioned, Tara Swart, I think she's amazing. I don't think she's a coach, but she's an author and a neuroscientist. She does lots of things, but I highly recommend her book. I actually really like Jodie Shield at the moment. She's a coach. She's like a financial coach. She's sort of turned into a financial coach. I just really like the content she's putting out there around money mindset, which is such a huge part of the mindset piece that we've been talking about today. There's a lady called Jamie C, as in like the sea, waves, the wavy sea. She has a podcast called Rising Wolf, which I have personally found really helpful. It's for mums, but mumpreneurs, but it doesn't matter if you're not a mum, it's really powerful, the content. She talks a lot about manifestation, and yeah, it's like all evidence-based, science-backed, because I know manifestation can get a bit of a bad rep, but you know, when it's anchored in science and neuroplasticity, and you know, it helps us to know that actually it's real, it's true. And yeah, like I've mentioned, I've always had a business coach, different ones at different times. I'm currently working with Vicky Schilling, who's great. I really love her. She's got great energy. So she's someone who inspires me as well.
And like I say, it's that accountability. It's really helpful, like being inspired by other coaches and getting help from anyone that you can. It's definitely good on the accountability side as well.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that there's so many more financial coaches out there speaking up as well, especially for females, because I think we've never been ones to maybe invest our money or think about our money. We've always had lower wages. So I think it's great for that. That's another, like you say, mindset thing again. And I think it's brilliant now that there's all these resources available to learn a bit more about finances.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on looking after your mindset then and your self-belief when facing challenges in your business, especially seeing as we're coming out of a pandemic, and that's been huge challenges, especially in business, let alone our lives?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think my response to that would be to make sure that we've got real self-compassion and kindness, self-love. I think that so much has happened in the last few years, running a business, or do whatever it is you're doing in your life right now, is challenging at the best of times, let alone with all the stuff that's been going on. So I think it can be helpful to really helpful to have just such self-compassion. The opposite of that is, in a way, being really hard on ourselves and having that inner critic take the floor in our mind and be very loud. And that is just so damaging and doesn't do us any favors at all. So if we can give ourselves a huge amount of self-love and compassion, I think then that helps us, with our mindset and to deal with these challenges.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It's really important, actually. It's surprising how much we don't really put self-care at the top, and we need to, especially if you're trying to run a business as well. I know many a time when I can think of situations where, I'm beating myself up if maybe the day hasn't gone quite the way you wanted it, instead of just like now letting it go and just thinking that's fine. It doesn't matter if it's been a bad day, it's not, move on from that. It's not, and learning about failure as well. It doesn't always matter if something fails. If something fails that day, it doesn't matter, move on from that. And like I say, take that time that you need to switch off. And I think, that's again, like you say, a powerful mindset thing again. It's about awareness again. And yeah, that's a really good tip, actually, to make sure that we, think about ourselves as well, especially in the hectic world and coming out of pandemic. I think we forget that, it affects us in our lives, let alone businesses. Yeah,
I think, it's a bit of it's a very, well-used term for a reason, where, it's important to fill your own cup first. I think as women, we tend to want to help others and give to others, and we can often be the last thing on our priority list. But, if we're on empty, you're not going to be able to love and support and help others from that place. So it's in everyone's interest for us to look after ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love it if you could give us your top tips for being the best version of ourselves. I know it's quite a big question.
Yeah, okay. So obviously one of the main themes that has come up is mindset. So top tips on being the best version of ourselves. One of the simple but really powerful things that I've used for years now is journaling. And I think, people tend to fall into two camps with journaling. They're either like fully on board and they get it, or they are just like, why would you even bother doing that? It's, type thing. Or they've never experienced it. They don't really get it. They don't understand the benefits. But the power of journaling is almost like you're coaching yourself, and there's something to do with the physical process of writing something down that helps you to make sense of what's going on in your mind, and it generates the self-awareness. That's essentially what journaling does. It helps you to develop self-awareness, which in turn will help you to understand what's going on in your head. And it turns the invisible visible. It's a really great tool to help you to understand, what's going on. There are so many different types of journaling. Obviously, you can just be doing like to-do lists, just getting everything down, or writing your goals, or doing a more reflective type practice where you might start it with something like, today I am feeling, and then just see what comes out, or that upset me because, or I am feeling this, why, and you're exploring that. So I really think that's a powerful way to be a best version of ourselves, is to self-awareness is this first step you need in order to go through this process of personal development, stepping up. I use the phrase stepping up quite a lot in my practice. And what I mean by stepping up is personal development, essentially. Is you're on this level, you're able to have a certain amount of joy, a certain amount of fulfillment, a certain amount of financial abundance. Your business is at a certain level. And until you do the inner work, until you raise your levels of awareness through journaling, whatever, and transform your mindset and your belief system to help you reach the next level, you'll be stuck at that step. So you have to do the work to step up and then access the next level. So that's the process of personal development. So definitely journaling, I think, is a really easy, it's free, and I highly recommend that. Linked with that is obviously self-belief, cultivating that self-belief. I often talk in my practice about the two different mindsets: the scarcity, lack, fear, negative mindset, where we are very afraid. It's a very easy sort of way to think if we've been thinking that way for a long time. So there's that mindset, or there's this abundant mindset where we have confidence, self-belief. We are really great at reframing failure. We use the power of reframing. So to be able to recognize, what is my mindset? Where are my beliefs right now? Are they serving me? And do the work to transform them. That could definitely help us to be the best version of ourselves. Something that's coming up for me as well recently is consistency. Mm-hmm. So I believe as women that we have this cycle, this hormonal cycle. If you're at the age where you're having periods still, we have this hormonal cycle, and it can change the way that we feel and our mood and our state throughout the month. And if you're not having periods and you're at a different stage of your life, you've still got all other hormones going on. But I have been challenged by consistency in my own business because of this sort of up, and I can, in the week before my period, I'm really low. I can be low energy, low motivation. And I guess this sort of connects in with my first tip about journaling and developing self-awareness, is noticing different things that can impact you, and recognizing that. And so, for me, whenever I'm able to be a bit more consistent in my marketing, consistent in my mindset, consistent in my morning routine, consistent in my habits, that has a really positive impact on me. But that can be really challenging sometimes, depending on life, hormones, and things like that. So I think that's just a reality of that one. And to sort of underpin what we mentioned before, my last tip on how to be the best version of ourselves is, absolute self-love and compassion.
Absolutely love those tips. They're really, really good, really helpful. And I've just started doing more of the journaling side, and I don't think you realise quite how powerful it can be till you actually do more of it. So I'm finding that, and it's fascinating that you've said about the consistency. It's definitely, I don't know about anybody else out there listening, but it's definitely an area that I really struggle with. And especially, like you say, as females, even when it comes to maybe training at the gym, I struggle with that when your hormones are up and down. But I think even for me, I'm someone who struggles with mental health. So consistency shows as I'm trying to start my business and grow it further, that's something I'm having to sort of navigate and be a bit more kind, like you say, about being kinder to yourself as well, because I'm having to notice that, that's affecting my business, and how do I navigate around that? So that's fascinating that you brought up consistency. That's really interesting.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm pleased it resonated, and
it might be hopeful for anybody else listening as well. So, and I really like to thank you so much for being with us today. It's really helpful, and I love learning about mindsets. I find mindset fascinating, especially when we're trying to get through our lives or business or wanting to change careers, anything. And so for anybody else listening or having listened to this, what's the best way that they can find you or work with you if they'd like to work with you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jane. So best way to sort of stay connected with me is probably through my Instagram. It's just at Sophie Clyde-Smith. That's all one word. Or my website is sophieclydesmith.com, and people can connect with me through that. I've got if they want sort of sign up to my newsletter, I send out regular tips and love and support to my newsletter community as well. So that's a great way to stay connected too.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'll obviously put those down in the notes for people as well, so that they can find the website easy. And I highly recommend going over and having a look, because there's lots of good free resources on there as well. So, and the newsletters are definitely motivational, especially if you're struggling and you're getting a bit stuck on the solopreneur. system. So yeah, highly recommend it. Oh, it's so lovely to talk to you, Sophie. I really appreciate you being with us today.
No, thank you, Jane. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.